How to start a lawn care business with no money. All right, that's what we're gonna hit. As entrepreneurs and business owners, we know that if we have a clear plan, anything becomes possible. And if you can have a clear plan, a clear process to create that plan, and a way to create clarity with your partner or spouse, you can drive to amazing heights. All right, so oddly, my first business, first of 16, and I actually don't count the first few, but I started my first of 16 companies at age 19. But I actually started with my first businesses when I was way younger, probably when I was 14, 15. And lawn care is actually a great business to get started in. Now, the way I did it initially was I stole my dad's lawnmower and I would go use neighbors. He knew about it, so I guess it wasn't stealing. And I would go and knock on doors and start pushing a mower around. Now, this may say, well, geez, I want to start a big commercial business. Well, if you have no money, you got to start somewhere. And remember that when you're working for somebody, when you're doing that job, it's almost as important, if not more important, that you do such a great job that they're going to give you a referral, that they're going to become a repeat customer. So when you start thinking about lawn care business, realistically, there's a very low barrier to entry. And what I mean by that is you don't need a lot to get started. In fact, if you have reasonable, even remotely reasonable credit, you can go to Home Depot or Lowe's or wherever and buy a mower and weed eater, and you're set to go. And that gets you started. Now, some people say, well, dude, I want to start at the bottom. Well, if you don't have a lot of money, starting somewhere is better than starting nowhere. And the reality is if you go out on your own, let's say you go out for just a season, but you do amazing work and you mow and you do a wonderful job doing lawn care for somebody, they give you a referral, they give you somebody else, they give you a referral, you're going to start learning a bunch as well. You're going to start understanding, how do I sell these and how do I talk to people better? How do I find these pieces in a different way? And the reality is too, you're going to start making some pretty decent cash. And as you build that cash, it's going to help you to start building a reserve of what exactly, or build your financial reserves. But it's also going to really start helping you to define what it is you need. So maybe you decide that, well, I want to get here, and actually if I had a zero radius machine, I could do 5 times as much work in a fifth at the time. Okay, that may be worth it. How much is it going to cost? And it's going to start helping you to save and start figuring out where that is. You may decide, actually, I can keep putting it in the back of my truck, or I can keep walking around the neighborhood, for crying out loud. I was 14, so I wasn't exactly driving. You can do this and build it up, and you can make great money to get started. Now, with this, I'm going to suggest that you think about what it is to get the equipment to get it started. Now, in some cases, you may say, well, I want to buy secondhand equipment and older. You can, although I have to say that the leasing options or financing options are usually harder on secondhand equipment. So you may go that route if you have equipment already, good enough. But if you need to, you may do not quite as nice, but not as many bells and whistles, but a more basic version of a residential or, excuse me, a non-commercial piece. The second piece, and this is not really legal, but I'm going to urge you to think about it, is in the perfect world, you would go before you did this, and you'd get your employer identification number. If you were setting up a small business or a corporation, you'd get that all set up. You would do those things. And I talk about that in my book, The Aspiring Solopreneur. And in our courses, they're very affordable online courses that allow you to, hey, very safely build out a team of advisors so you can figure out how to do this really well and then dive in. But in some cases, you may just get started with it. Usually, the exposure is if you do something in bad and you don't have insurance, you're going to get hurt bad. So I would recommend that you at least talk about getting insurance for this. But if this ends up being a paralysis for you, go out and, even if you work for a week, get some cash going that gives you enough to get started. Then you can use that money to actually build your to build your structure, so you can have your small business, get an employer identification number, and those usually don't cost anything, so I would encourage you to do those sooner than later. But really make sure you're covering your butt with insurance. A lot of people don't, and they go years without it, but it bites them in the ass eventually. So when you have that insurance, so that you're covered, keep it above board, make sure that you do everything that you're going to take to get legal. So the first thing is figure out the equipment, the areas you want. Second, go out and actually start getting the jobs and working. Third, make sure no questions asked that you're legal. And then as you start to grow, start looking and start figuring out, what does your business want to look like? What is your niche going to be? Now, if you happen to have stumbled onto some commercial gigs and like, wow, I like these. I can do them early, nobody cares. I can handle commercial gigs from 5 in the morning till 9 before it gets too hot, and then I can do residentials in the afternoon because I'm not worrying about waking people up. But start thinking about what your business looks like, what success will look like for you. And then you can start to grow and build and say, okay, well then I want to get employees. Whole different ball game. You're going to have to do a bunch of extra hoops. But again, we talk about that and how you start leveraging up and how you grow in those cases. When you start and bootstrap, that's what's called bootstrapping, is starting where you're pulling yourself up by your own bootstraps, where you have almost no money. I can tell you that I've built multiple businesses this way. And sometimes it's a really good way because you learn so much more as you ran and ramped through by being in the trenches. So hopefully you found some value today. If you did, please subscribe. If you got questions or you want to learn about our course, please go to aspiringsolopreneur.com. Keep smiling.